Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back again to discuss a very, very disappointing day out at the Cottage. Fulham going down 4-1 to Wolves, our biggest loss of the season so far, and probably our biggest disappointment of the season so far. Here to get it all out of our systems, we have some regulars, but also a special guest. I'll throw to the regulars first. Sammy, how are we going?
I'm doing very, very good. I am very tired as always. I'm a bit less dehydrated than I would typically like to be. I'm currently in WA right now, which is why my setup kind of feels like it's a bit of a hostage situation, or maybe I'm just one of those reporters that they've swept in. I feel very like that you've caught me. I'm like part of the Athletic, and they've caught me in a bit of a rush, and I'm making good time for my good friends. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here. The chaos is still very much in effect. Hey, people.
Good stuff, Sammy. Dave, how are we going?
Well, my weekend's been ruined. Pretty miserable outside too. It was all set up to be such a nice Saturday afternoon, and we unfortunately we didn't turn up, and they did, and it's just it's hard to cope with. But I'm hoping today we'll have a nice, as I said before the pod, cathartic experience. We'll vent all of our stresses and our worries and our concerns with yesterday's game, and we'll all feel better and enjoy the rest of our Sunday.
Yeah, we'll all feel better and look forward to Spurs, who just thumped Man City 4-0 next weekend. So, yeah, it's all looking bright and rosy for us at the moment. And joining us as well today, a very special guest, Mary Southgate, Fulham Football Club women's captain for 5 years, was it, Mary?
And that's 7.5, yeah.
7.5 years, wow. And a long-term season ticket holder at the Cottage as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
It's
to be on.
Yeah, it's a real shame it's not a more positive game to talk about, which is always a bit more fun. But I'm sure we'll be able to get stuck into this one and use your expert knowledge on the game as well. So let's crack into it. As always, just a shout out for the That's So Craven Discord. Please do jump in and join the community. We really appreciate the people in there who constantly contribute really good stuff in there, especially guys like Cottage Tactico, Fulham Fan News, who give us up-to-date insights. Check out the links in all our bios on our socials. You'll also find us now on Blue Sky as well, one of the early adopters of Blue Sky. Jumped across with Fulhamish now there as well, and Fulham have their official account set up during the week as well. So we're hoping that we'll see a bit of a transition across from X in the coming months, but please do check us out there. And look, Mary, we'll throw back to you. As I said before, it'd just be great for you to share with our listeners your sort of Fulham journey.
Yeah, so I've been a Fulham fan all my life. My parents are, my family, my grandparents are. So it's a big family thing, as I'm sure it is for a lot of football fans, not just Fulham. But yeah, I've had a season ticket for a number of years now. So yeah, sit in the Hammersmith end with the old sing-song. We like that part in H5. So yeah, it's a big part of us to go to all the home games. I was buzzing yesterday with Iwobi's goal, and then it went a bit downhill. But yeah.
What can you say? What can you say though? Yeah, it's true.
It is a Sunday like that at the moment, where it is a bit like, it was all looking so good at the start.
That part.
Well, let's jump into the game itself. And look, pre-match, I guess the big news coming out of this one was the loss of Sander Berger, and Lukic feeling almost rushed back into the side after his injury. We weren't even sure if he was going to be involved in the squad. Mary, Sander Berger's been great stepping in for Lukic. How big a loss do you think that is, despite Lukic being one of our better players at the start of the season? Do you think that sort of last-minute unsettling of the team had a massive effect?
Yeah, I think so. I think any changes can have an effect, especially when we've got a bit of consistency over the last few games. I know we've just had the break, but I don't know why he was not there yesterday. I think I read it was sickness maybe. So hopefully we can have him back for the Spurs game, because I think he was a big loss. Obviously his height as well in there is an added bonus. But I think it was a loss. I think we had grown a bit of consistency. but then you look at, we've just had an international break as well, and 8-9 players, was it, of ours that were out.
Yeah.
So that maybe had an effect as well.
And
True.
yeah, Dave, what is it about international breaks and Fulham? I saw Cottage Tactico putting up a bit of a thread about it, but our record after the international break is dire.
It is dire. It's getting quite frustrating. And we just picked up a bit of momentum, hadn't we? We'd won the 2 games prior, should have been 3 games prior with the Everton result as well. So we were playing well. And we have a lot of players that go all around the world. And it just, some of them were playing midweek, Raul and Anthony Robinson, I think. So there's a few that were playing midweek that are then rushed back in. And we're just not dealing with it very well. And I think it's Marco doesn't like to change a winning team. So he'll stick with the side, that won the last game, regardless of how much they've played in internationals and or travel that they've done. And maybe there's something in that. Maybe Marco needs to freshen things up a little bit more when players have had long journeys, because we've got a squad this year of players who can come into the side and are knocking on the door for starts. And you just think that maybe, as good as it is to have consistency, when you've had that much disruption, particularly in the week leading up to the game, should we put some fresh legs out there? Just a question. I don't know. But who am I to question Marco Silva? But it's just a thought that crossed my mind.
He's a genius.
I think you can question anyone after a 4-1 loss, though. I think that's fair. I really like Lukic. I've been singing his praises, and a lot of people have been really, really big on like Sander Berge all season. And it's not that I haven't been like big on him, but I was really excited to see him actually come back. And I actually thought he was probably one of the better on the park the other day. But it's just in all fairness, I remember like particularly in the first half, and I was like, we're playing better. Why is Lamina at centre back? Like, they're not making sense. There's a lot of things that I don't get that Wolves are doing. They didn't seem threatening, and it really did unravel all in really like the last half. So I think we did actually start off all right. It didn't feel like, I felt that we were passing so much better than they was. I feel that we were domineering the game quite a lot, and even after they scored their first goal, I wasn't too worried about it. Like, I don't know. It didn't feel like it was going to be the game that it became, which makes it all the more frustrating and irritating that it was.
Well, we definitely did start the better side, and I think even on the commentary as we were watching the game, they said, Fulham completely dominating. Wolves, as you mentioned, Sammy, had to make quite a few changes. Lamina at centre back. I actually quite enjoyed watching Lamina at centre back by the end of the game, because he was really pulling the strings for the whole game, and you can see the difference it makes when you have someone playing at centre back who's able to pass the way he can. And we saw it for their first goal, which we'll get onto. But what a great goal from Iwobi to start with. But even before that, the first chance that fell to Fulham, and I don't know if you guys have rewatched the highlights, but that Jimenez miss, Mary, different game if you put that in the back of the net.
I mean, I probably would miss it being a centre back, but it's a different story. That would have changed the game, wouldn't it? I mean, we still got the 7 minutes. But...
Yeah. And what you might not have seen if you haven't rewatched the game, that Lamina possibly gets a very slight touch on it, and it does just bobble before it gets to Jimenez. But to manage to slam that against the crossbar the way he did, you'd expect a striker to put that away, 99 times out of 100. So to miss that, it did feel like it was going to be one of those games. But fortunately, David Iwobi with just such a good goal on his weaker left foot as well. What a finish that was.
Yeah, it was a quality goal. Just going back for a second though on that, the Raul miss. There's so many kind of familiar things that happened yesterday for the Aston Villa game. I don't know if you remember, Raul also missed a free header from a corner quite early in that game. And yesterday's miss, that's up there in the highlight reels of worst misses of the season. He's got to finish that. It's an unbelievable miss. It's a completely open goal. But we kept the intensity, and it's great to see Iwobi shoot. I mean, we don't shoot enough, I think, generally.
Yeah. Especially from that kind of area.
No, we don't, and it's quite frustrating. And yesterday, Iwobi's taken it upon himself to have a strike with his left foot as well. Just he's just got so much in his locker, Iwobi, and he was really influencing the game really well at the time. First assist for Kenny Tete as well of the season, so that was good to see too. But yeah, once we went 1-0 up, I didn't at that time foresee anything but a win. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock to the system when Wolves scored a little bit against a run of play.
Well, yeah, go on, Sammy.
I did there was a point in the commentary, and forgive me for not picking this up at any other point in the season, but apparently we haven't scored any goals from set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
That felt like an omen for what was going to come in hindsight, because I remember being quite shocked by that, and I remember being a bit I remember just kind of checking myself, just thinking, was that actually true? But then that checked out. And with just the weather and everything yesterday, it just wasn't really set up to be our day, was it? And I didn't think we were ever going to claw that back. I mean, everyone's a genius in hindsight, but it really wasn't Jimenez's day. It didn't feel like it was going to be at any point. And I felt that he stayed on for probably way too much longer than I would typically like him to have stayed. I thought it could have even changed at halftime to Muniz. But yeah, because I just didn't really feel, I don't know, maybe I'm also looking back at this extremely negatively. But it just didn't really feel like it was a game for Jimenez at that stage, even though I know he used to play for Wolves and there's that experience there, but no, it just didn't feel like that to me. But I was really tired as well.
I think going back to the set pieces, and I made comment, and I think I put it in our little group WhatsApp as well, that Pereira's balls in, we had a number of free kicks early doors, sort of from out wide, that were in really good positions to be able to swing a ball into the box, into a dangerous area. And Pereira was just putting them in so shallow, kind of to the edge of the box rather than attacking the 6-yard box. So our players were sort of making a run and all having to stop and try and have the ball sort of land on top of their head. But it just felt like we were missing a number of opportunities there. And it was just, it was a bit of an omen for the rest of the day, I think, which, played out, unfortunately, the way it did. Let's talk about the first Wolves goal. Mary, I'll throw to you as a centre back yourself. It's a great ball over the top from Lamina, and Cunha takes it down incredibly. First touch is brilliant, puts it in the back of the net brilliantly as well. Should Anderson have potentially done better there?
I think it's like Sam was saying, the conditions are tough, aren't they? If you're pinging a long ball like that, it gets picked up in the wind. But I think you've got to judge it as a centre back. If someone's about to do a long ball. I think Anderson was a little bit off his pace at times yesterday. So maybe he could have dropped a bit more, done a bit more to try and block the shot. But I wouldn't say Leno could have done anything really. I wouldn't put it on Leno. But it was a great ball, great touch. Just what they needed before half time, wasn't it? But yeah, I think we could have. I don't know. You can always hope that you can stop it, can't you? On reflection, but in the moment, it's difficult, isn't it?
It was a sensational touch.
Can you really assign any blame there? Because the ball over the top was so pinpoint. Cunha runs from so deep there as well. It's not like he's sitting on Anderson. Anderson sort of has to pick him up, and it is pinpoint. It's on a penny kind of ball.
Yeah, put the ball straight, perfect spot for the ball, wasn't it? Between the goalie and defender. Between Leno and Anderson, it was perfectly weighted. So I think it was a great goal.
Do we think maybe Anderson was carrying a knock going into this game and maybe played through it? Because, like you said, maybe he'd looked a little bit off pace during the game. Obviously went off late with some sort of calf injury because we saw him getting his calf strapped up. Is there the possibility that might have been the case? And maybe if he was fully fit going into the game, he maybe picks that one up a little bit better?
Yeah, maybe. And I think it's important they're going to have to work out if he can play against Spurs, because I think we've got quite good consistency at the moment with the back line, and I think they're really strong at the moment. I think it's a good area of ours, and like we all know, like you don't really want to make too many changes to a back line when it's working. So I don't know how bad his injury is, but we've got to hope, I think, that he's back for the Spurs game. If not, I suppose Diop would come in, but Anderson's a quality player, so hopefully.
Yeah.
Can I throw a question? Mary, because you're actually a professional athlete and you are they have significantly more talent than anyone in this chat room. I know there might be some objections there, but I think that you do. When you do have somebody else who isn't necessarily your favorite person or the person that you connect with next to you in a centre back position, how much does that jar with you? Or how much does, say, for example, somebody's performance bring you down when you're in that kind of situation? Because I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah, I do generally think the centre-back partnership is one of the most important ones on the pitch. I think you've got to be able to get on. You've got to be able to understand how you work, how you communicate. And so I think it can really affect it because you want to be able to do things slick. You want to be able to do things without hesitation. But if you've got doubt or irritation with one of the partnerships, then I do think it changes the performance a little bit. Yeah, I've felt that before. Yeah, if it's not quite the right partnership, some just aren't, are they? But it does affect it a little bit. I mean, the guys probably, I don't know, maybe they can get on with it better. But I think
we saw it with like Ream and Bassi last season, for example, where it's just not fully clicking and you're playing slightly out of position, maybe to allow someone else to play in the lineup. It definitely has an effect. And, you know, I'm sure on the training ground, a lot of it is drilled around Anderson and Bassi both playing together. And so if all of a sudden Diop has to slide in there to take his place, it's not what you've been working towards, and it's not the person you're constantly looking to pass the ball back and forth to. So
I think
it's surely going to have a big difference,
don't you? And then you're looking at like your game and their game a little bit. Whereas if, like you say, they're practicing as a partnership in training, then they know what they're doing. But if you haven't played Diop for a while, you are sort of having to think about their game a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Diop, obviously, he played the Everton game because Anderson was suspended. He played quite well. He got a bit of criticism for their goal at the end, but I thought he had a pretty good game. He also started the season with Bassi. So I think the blessing in disguise is that Bassi and Diop have played together 4-5 times this season already. So you'd hope that they've got a bit of an understanding now of how to play together. So I think it's really what's going to be quite key for me is what we do in front of them to support them, particularly not just Spurs, but actually, you know, Brighton, Arsenal, Liverpool. We've got a really tough run, and you know, especially if Anderson's going to be missing for any of those games, we're going to have to set up slightly differently to give the backline a bit more support.
Well, yeah, let's sort of discuss that a bit. Let's assume that Sanderberger had an illness, maybe a cold or some food poisoning, which can often happen, and he's available for the next game. Obviously, I think Lukic was one of our better players yesterday, so you know, could easily continue in that spot. But Pereira, for me, had a bit of an off day, and I think that was sort of echoed in Marco's substitutions, dragging him off fairly early. Do we? Well, on top of that, I think Smith Rowe didn't have the best game yesterday either.
I'd agree. Yeah.
Reece Nelson played pretty well, I thought. Iwobi obviously played very well. Wilson off the bench, you know, not quite as impactful, but obviously coming into a fairly tough situation. Adama Traore, I thought, looked okay in little patches, but again, didn't have a huge impact. How do we see, if all of them are available, potential changes coming in? Do we think maybe against the Spurs side, who are very free-flowing, we maybe look at dropping Pereira and bringing in Berger and Lukic and sitting a little bit deeper?
Well, I hope so. I hope so, because I mean, you think we saw the blueprint for when we play like the bigger teams away from home against Man City, where he played Berger, Lukic, and then moved AP forward a bit to the number 10. Traore also started that game, got in behind quite often, and I think that's the kind of that's what we'll do when we play the big teams away, and that's how we'll adjust. But I'm going to upset a lot of people now, but I've just kind of grown so frustrated with AP over the course of this season. I think he's had, flashes of, half decent spells in games, but genuinely, I think his performances have been under par, and I think he's due to be taken out of the team. So certainly, I'd say if Anderson's missing, the call for that is even stronger, because as I said, we're going to need more support in the midfield to help the defense. And I would think a double pivot of Berger and Lukic would make a lot of sense. And then we've got so many options in front of them. We've got Harry Wilson knocking on the door. I know you mentioned didn't quite look himself yesterday, still hit the bar and nearly scored a screamer. He's got that in him. I also think he went on the wing. But I feel like I want to see more of him in the 10. I want to see him more supporting the striker and getting in, making those runs, having a bit of a free rein. I think Adama has to come back in. I think Adama, I might be in a minority here. I think it's a bit harsh. He lost his place. I think he's had.
Me too. I don't understand why that happened.
I just think, especially at those kind of games where he's going to have space to run into, but his crossing has been really, really good this year. He could have loads more assists if it wasn't for some wasteful finishing. And I really wouldn't see him come back into the side next week to give us an outlet.
Mary?
Yeah, I think Traore is one to bring in. His pace as well. He can just help break out of defence a bit, quite quickly, quite powerfully. I know we attack quickly as well as a whole team, although I don't think we did it quite as quickly yesterday. We started. The first half, first 25, 30 minutes, we were playing all right, but I don't think we was at our best yesterday with the attacking play. But Traore, I think, would add to that and just help in those moments that we need. He can bring the pace, just keep that tempo high, help us break out of defence quickly.
Sammy, if you had to pick your sort of midfield 5, I guess, of your 2 central and your 3 sitting behind the striker, who are you going with for Spurs?
I was really hoping that you weren't going to give me such a specific question. I thought you were going to allow me to be a little bit more open-ended than that. That's really annoying. Okay. So, I'm going to go off the back of what Dave said, because, I'm not fully ready to write off Pereira, because I actually think he's playing out of position, and I gave Sasa Lukic an entire year to actually come good, and now he is kind of coming good. And frankly, I can't really judge Pereira too much, because I think he should actually be playing in Smith Rowe's position, because that is his best position, even though it's a completely different player. So it's really, really hard for me to critique him genuinely. I'm not sure if my whole thing is I'm not really sure if I like the idea of Lukic and Berger there, just because then we just have no creativity and we essentially just have a wall, which I don't really like that. If anything, I know it's a bit of a Hail Mary, but I would almost prefer Kearney and Berger, or Kearney and Lukic in there, if Pereira is not necessarily working, because we've got Pereira there to be a creative element. So I feel that if you want that to be the system, bring in another creative element. And so for me, I would be happy with either really Lukic or Berger, because I feel that they are quite interchangeable, and maybe Kearney in there. It would definitely a Traore start, with somebody so impactful like that. I always prefer him there. Even though I really, really like Reece Nelson, but I kind of prefer Reece Nelson off the bench now. So I'd start Traore, start Iwobi. That's pretty much locked in. And I'd still probably start ESR, but at the later points in the game, I bring in Wilson in the 10. I'm a bit over Wilson on the wing. I feel like it hasn't worked for quite a long time, but Wilson in a 10 where he can actually get into positions and he doesn't have to cut in the extreme way that he would typically do coming from the wing. That would be my football manager. That would be how I would do it.
Yeah, no, I think there's there's definitely some things for Marco to have a think about. And I think we will see some changes, Dave.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there will be some changes. I would, as I mentioned, if Berger's fit, I think he has to come in and solidify that midfield. I love Tom Kearney, Sam, but I just think that away at Spurs, where we're not going to have as much of the ball, I'm not sure he's got the legs to kind of, support. And I think it would just leave us a little bit exposed. So I also think that I'd like to see Berger and Lukic, taking it in turns, to get forward, because I do think they have got talent they're not just kind of destroyers. I think Lukic has got a bit about him, and I think if he had a bit more license to move forward, I think he could link play well. So I'd like to see that a little bit more. In the attacking areas, I think we've got some options. I think Adama for sure has to come in on the right for me. And I'd probably be quite ruthless. I'd drop a few after Saturday. I don't expect Marco to, but I would. I maybe I'm a bit more old-fashioned than him. I'd drop a few and shake things up. I'd probably move Nelson back to the bench, move Iwobi over to the left, as he's played quite well this year. I'd be tempted to give Wilson a go in the 10. I would. And I think I'd also be tempted to give Muniz a run out. So we've got an outlet on there, someone who can hold the ball up and play in the wingers, because I think we're going to have to counter attack. So I would make quite a few changes, but not expecting Marco to do that.
I think about bringing Muniz in, but I just didn't want to die on that horse. So I'm glad you did for me.
I do think we've got to just make sure that we don't sit too deep. Like you said, we need a bit of creativity in the middle. I agree. I don't think Kenny's got the legs to start. Although he's obviously very good on the ball. But I think we've got to get the balance of being able to be creative in the middle and still attack. But we do, if Anderson's not there, we do need to protect the back line, because Diop's not quite the same player as Anderson. That is cross balls like Anderson does. I don't think Diop does that to the same extent. So we do need some protection in there, but I would like it not to be that we sit too deep.
I think against Spurs, especially, who play a very high line, you do want to continue to attack them, and I think we did that well when we beat them. Was that last season? Beat them 3-0, and they'll give you opportunities. We just have to take them, and I think if we sit too deep and try and park the bus, we'll actually miss out on those opportunities. So another one that's worth talking about, which I think you brought up there, Dave. Raul Jimenez has gone now 4 games without scoring. I know he's obviously done some good things, but he's missed a couple of decent chances. Mary, is it time to give Muniz another run out? Do we need to shake things up a bit?
Yeah, I mean, Jimenez holds the ball up well, but yesterday's, that was a shock of a miss, wasn't it? And their key moments, we know in the Premier League, like especially Fulham, we've got to take the moments that we get. I was going to compare ourselves to Man City, who get loads of chances, but actually it's a bad time to compare to them. But we've got to take the chances that we get, so he's got to be putting them away. Muniz, it's tough for him coming on it, like with not that many. He's not got that long to make an impact. I think at the moment he's not had that much of a run out, so I think he does need some opportunity, and I suppose it will just increase the competition then between Jimenez and Muniz, and maybe that would be a beneficial thing. It will make Jimenez work a bit harder, hopefully, and maybe take those crunch moments.
I actually like Muniz in the squad more than I like Jimenez in the squad. I think Muniz actually facilitates better play and actually gets more involved and creates better opportunities for everybody than Jimenez is. Jimenez is when he's on, he can do absolutely filthy things like that back heel assist, and it's very fireworks, and it's chaotic in a way that like I love, and it's free flowing creativity, which is fantastic when everything is going good. But I want a functional team that is well set up, well drilled, and can, as we've discussed, hold up the ball and also provide to everybody else. So for me, I've changed my mind, Mary. This happens very often. I change my mind every 2 minutes, so I've decided that Muniz is coming in, and I'm happy with that.
You better
decision.
ring up Marco Silva then.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll have him on the phone.
Yeah.
Back to the game yesterday. I saw a number of comments, and I think you mentioned it as well, Dave, and Skibby mentioned it in our WhatsApp, and I've seen on the Discord as well, a lot of people mentioning it was very quiet at the Cottage yesterday. Mary, your thoughts? Did it feel that way? Did it feel like there was a weird air around the ground?
Yeah, I said that to my mum actually. We sit next to each other, and I said during the first half, it's not the same as the Brentford game. I mean, midweek games are always another level, aren't they, under the lights? But it was really quiet yesterday. You could hear the Wolves fans singing about our support being quite poor. I won't use the words they use, but yeah, it was quiet, and I do think that has an impact. The louder we are as fans, it gives the players more energy, doesn't it? And you know, in those moments when they've got the ball and they're trying to drive, it would give them a bit more intensity. So I think we do play a big part, and it was quiet, but I don't know why. Maybe it's the weather. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry, no, you, Jack.
I was going to say on the TV coverage, all we could hear was that stupid chant "Wolverhampton Wanderers" round and round and round for hours and hours. It felt like, but yeah, it did feel surprisingly quiet in the Cottage yesterday. Dave?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I think it must have been something to do with the weather. You know, it wasn't a very nice day, and you know, I think it's such a different. It's a different day out when the sun's shining, going to Craven Cottage on a Saturday afternoon to one where it's just kind of a bit miserable, and you just kind of it takes the shine off it. So I think it was just something to do with that, because we've actually started quite well. There's nothing to suggest why the fans would be quiet. We started quite well. We scored first. I think the equaliser did knock us all for 6 a little bit. I think it knocked the crowd for 6, and I think it knocked the team a little bit. You know, I think everyone thought we were going to kind of stroll the game at that 1-0 point. And then all of a sudden, oh, hang on a second, they've scored an amazing goal. And it was an amazing goal, by the way. That's another point I wanted to raise. And I'm sure we would have got onto it because he scored 2 goals in the game. But Kuna, I mean, for me, the best player I've seen at Craven Cottage this season, for sure. I think he's an outstanding player. I don't think he'd look out of place in Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal's team. And his performance yesterday, the 2 goals were absolutely incredible. The first goal, to bring it down, control and lift, that is just that's top level.
Well, the second goal was a first time hit as well.
Unbelievable finish.
That was a piss take, that goal. I was furious after that.
And
you were asleep, Sammy. And on top of that, the through ball as well to Gomez was from Cunha as well. He sort of fakes to go the other way, completely throws Kenny Tete off because you can see Tete's running across the goal at that point, and Gomez just peels off, finds himself in some space, and it's a good finish. Maybe Leno should do a little better there because it sort of goes under him. But he did thump it. It goes very fast past him. He almost didn't have time to react to it. But look, there were good goals scored, and it was 2-1 when Anderson went off, and I think that was really the point that the game changed. Fulham with 10 men. Marco decided to go and stick with just 3 at the back, which, look, personally, I think was kind of the right decision. I'd prefer us to lose 4-1 trying to get something out of the game than to lose 2-1 and put 4 at the back and be a little bit more solid potentially. But how much of an issue do you think it was once Anderson went off? Do you guys think we should have gone to 4 at the back and been a little bit more conservative, or was that the right decision at the time?
I think you're right. I think we're 2-1 down. We've got to go out trying, haven't we? We can't start parking. There's no point going 4 at the back and going defensive when we need to get a goal. So I think it was a tricky one. We're obviously down to 10 men, but we had to go and attack and try and get the points. Obviously, it didn't pay off yesterday, and it did change the game. But if he had have gone more defensive, we would have probably been like, why didn't we go and attack more? So...
Go on, Dave.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
why,
was, a big, that was a
what?
yeah,
Yeah,
that was a big breathe in.
wider issue on the subs though. I'm not sure. Marco got them quite right yesterday.
Yeah, I agree.
I wasn't sure. I thought Nelson kind of faded a bit in the second half. I've seen that a couple of
Mm.
times this season, where his impact in the game seems to be very much either off the bench, where he's been brilliant, or kind of really kind of electric in the first half an hour, and then it just kind of fades. And I just thought he probably should have come off. To take both ESR and Pereira out at the same time, I think was quite disruptive to our midfield. I know Skibby mentioned that in the group, and I agree with him. It's not saying that either of them didn't deserve to come off, because they were both kind of out of sorts, right? But just to take them both off at the same time, I thought just kind of just settled the team, unsettled the team is the word I was looking for. So it was too much shuffle and change, and then that also brought Wilson to the right. And as I said, that's not where I really want him. I want him doing what he's been doing the last few weeks, which is playing a bit more of a free role, making the runs into the box. And don't get me wrong, nearly scored a screamer. And I also think if Anderson hadn't have gone off, we probably would have ended up getting something out of the game, because we were starting to create a bit more, and that really knocked us for 6. But I just think there was a few subs at maybe not the right time, and just too much that disjointed the whole side.
Sammy?
I think no. To be honest, I think that's actually been pretty well covered. My only thing is that I just wanted to see more of Muniz. I kind of vaguely understand that you need to give your striker time, but it's one of those things that I don't necessarily agree with, and I'd be quite ruthless about it. And if it's not, and especially after Jimenez's first half, where he missed. He missed 2 opportunities in the first half, right? I'm remembering that wrong?
Oh, God.
Definitely one. I don't think he missed 2. He had a couple go slightly over his head. Maybe his runs were slightly off. And in the second half, he had another one that just sort of got past him a bit. We were just, it felt like a step off most of the game, I'd say.
One thing that I did actually note of Jimenez's performance is I remember there was a moment where he also actually cut inside, and he went on like a little bit of run in like the 3/4 mark of like the park, just going into like Wolves' box. And I remember watching it, just thinking that's probably one of the first times I've actually seen Jimenez do that and actually carry the ball forward. And I can think of a million times that I've seen Jimenez. Yeah, it just really kind of struck me. I was like, it was good. It was good, but it was unusual. And I'm like, I see Muniz do this more, and I would actually prefer to see this a lot more than it be an anomaly and something that I just feel I haven't seen this from Jimenez before. And I feel like I don't know, maybe that's just me in that, but I just thought that was noteworthy in my brain, because I was going, I never see him drive like that, and I want to see a lot more of that kind of driving.
I think Wilson gets to do that at times as well. He does, like having a bit of a free role to go and attack, which would be good. I also want to bring up on Wilson, if he had scored that goal to make it 2-2, when he came on, the game would have been different as well. So it's like opportunities like that, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And look, the third goal for Wolves, as in Cunha's second, a great goal. The fourth goal doesn't happen if we have 11 men on the field. It's as simple as that. It's a disappointing loss, but I think definitely those last couple of goals are explained when you're down to 10 men, unfortunately. I think I do agree in a sense that Marco didn't get the subs quite right, but I also think we were incredibly unlucky losing Anderson, just 7 minutes after making 3 subs. But look, it's just the way the cards fell on the day, I guess. You can't really do too much about it at that point. Credit
to them too. They're in a bit of a false position. They've got some unbelievable players. We've talked about Cunha, but Lamina, he was playing out of position, had a great game.
He was superb, yeah.
Gomez in midfield, really, really solid player. Aït-Nouri was a little bit quiet yesterday, but we know he's a good player too. So they looked up for it. I think we probably played them a bit at the wrong time after their first win, just before the international break. It looked like their spirits had been buoyed. So yeah, credit to them, I think, where it's due.
Let's have a quick look at some of the stats in the game. Fulham dominating possession with 59% to Wolves' 41. Both teams with 10 shots on goal. Fulham only 3 shots on target. Wolves scoring with 4 of their 5 shots on target. Fulham dominating with the passes, 545 to 392. 7 corners to 2 for Fulham and 14 fouls apiece. Look, I think this tells a bit of a story of the game as well. We should be creating more chances than that. And it felt like with the dominance we had for the first half hour of the game, to have only 10 shots on goal for the entire game, when I think we were constantly putting pressure on the Wolves box, and to only have 3 shots on target for the whole game is disappointing. And for me, that shouts out that we need to make some changes up across the top. And for Spurs especially, I definitely see Muniz coming into the team. I just think some physicality against that Spurs defense would be handy. And I'd like to see Adama jump in as well, just because I think there's going to be space in behind that we can exploit. And I really like the way Muniz actually links up with the wingers. He often puts really good balls in behind the lines for the wingers to run onto. And I'm weirdly, off the back of a poor result, I'm not feeling overly worried about Spurs. I know we never really play well against them, but I just feel like it feels like a one-off. Like we shouldn't be too disheartened by this result. We're a good side. We had a little bit of bad luck. We also went down to some magic, and we sort of mentioned it in the preview for this for this game, when we said we have to be wary of the magic that Wolves can produce, because they've got players like Cunha who can pull off some incredible stuff, and they did. And unfortunately, they pulled off 3 or 4 incredible pieces of play that sort of did us in on the day. So it's a disappointing result, but definitely not one I don't think one to dwell on.
I was going to add as well that on the stats, like their fouls, they started from the start fouling very quickly on. I'm assuming that was a tactic of theirs, just to break up play. Like, we are a good attacking team, we're good at our passing. Marco Silva's done really well with that, and I think their fouls, they've got 14 now. I think they started that very early on just to try and break it up, and I think it probably did have an impact. It's like stops momentum, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then, horrific time wasting, as Fulham Pulse on the live stream has just said. Time wasting from very, very early on in the game, and then late on as well. I can't remember who it was. Semedo went down for a very long time and then trotted back on like nothing had ever happened. I can't remember who went down in the middle and we played on, and then they continued to play on as well in the first half and booed us when we continued to play on afterwards.
But they carried on playing, so if they don't
so you can't argue
that.
But it did just feel it was an off day for sure for Fulham. And look, I think it is one that we can just sort of put in the past and move on from. And hopefully we can regroup before Spurs. But I really think there are some big changes coming this coming weekend. Obviously, Anderson likely to be out. But I think across that sort of front 6, we do need to make some changes just to shake things up a little bit, because that's not a performance that Marco will accept, I wouldn't have thought. Looking at the table, it's kind of disappointing, but well, I mean, at one point we were sitting in 6th. We now sit in 10th place, but still we're only 4 points away from 5th. It's not like we've dropped off completely. There are still a few games to play, with Newcastle sitting just ahead of us on goal difference now. Biggest thing, I think, is actually the hit to the goal difference, which was looking fairly good with a positive 3. Now we're back to level pegging. But there is still that gap at the bottom. The teams at the bottom are looking pretty poor this season, with Southampton, Ipswich, Palace, Leicester, Everton, even Wolves, who are still sitting down the bottom. I think there is a bit of a gap from those teams down the bottom. Sammy?
Look, I understand that comparison is the thief of joy, but I just really liked being 7th in the table, and I just want to get that out there, because it was really, really nice. And I remember seeing it on like the telly, and I was like, "That's a beautiful, beautiful thing." And I'm just mourning. I'm just mourning what was, because when we had it, it was beautiful. And 10th is still good. It's still good. But I've tasted caviar, and I I just want to keep living that life, and I can't be blamed for that, you know.
Did you have your passport out ready? Just in case?
I mean, I don't want to talk about this. It's you know?
I mean,
Sorry.
No, I was going to say one of the benefits is Villa, who are above us, drew last night with Palace. Forest, who are still flying way too high, I think, got thumped by Arsenal last night. So it's not exactly like we're losing touch with those teams above us. As you can see, 1 point takes us to 6th at the moment. Not quite on goal difference, but we are still in a very good position thanks to a good start to the season. But the big thing, as we've sort of mentioned a few times, the upcoming run is pretty rough. Spurs, Brighton, Arsenal, Liverpool to come. These next 4 games could really see us dive down the table if we don't sort of pull our act together. Mary, how important do you think? Obviously, 12 games into the season, you can't really make any judgments yet. But if we did have, a bad run of results over the next 4 going into December, maybe very possible we don't pick up any points in our next 4 games and maybe drop down to 14th, maybe 15th. Do you think that'll have a big impact on the squad, or do you think they're looking at this as a bit more of a long game?
I think I looked at, was it Nelson said the other day that they just go 1 game at a time, and I think that's really important. We are likely to get a few knocks in these next few games. Although saying that, like, we had a great game against Man City, so if we can perform like that, then who knows? But we have to be realistic, I suppose, as Fulham fans. But I think, like Nelson said, just got to go 1 game at a time, and it just makes you think about previous games where we should have picked up more points, and it just reminds us we've got to be clinical in these moments, because some of the points we've dropped, we can't always talk about the past now, but we need them, don't we?
Mary, when Nelson says like we just take 1 game at a time, that to me that just kind of comes off as I've been media trained. I know how to get through this. So whenever you say, I'm just going to take it, we just take it each game at a time. What are you actually saying? Do you actually take it each game at a time, or
you do look at the table? So I did think that. I thought he definitely knows what the next games coming up are. Yeah. No, you do think ahead a bit, don't you? You do look at them, but you have got in the week of training. Your week of training is focused on that match coming up.
Yeah.
And all your discussions are about that. So maybe individually, I'll look at who we're playing and where the table is and things like that. But training wise and what they talk about at Motzer Park, I'm sure it's focused just on 1 game at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the next 4 1 games are pretty rough ones. Dave, your thoughts?
So yeah, I mean, you've been very optimistic in your review of the table. All of the commentary was about the teams above us, and I love that. But I think genuinely with this run, I was looking at that gap between us and Crystal Palace, and just maybe it was a very pessimistic view, but just trying to keep that gap as wide as it can be.
Yeah.
And hoping after the next 4 games we're not dragged closer, and that gap doesn't narrow too much. I want lots of teams in the way, and a healthy points gap in the way too. So, because it is going to be a tricky period, no doubt about it. Spurs, I just would never get anything at away. We never get anything away at Spurs, and they're just such a funny side, aren't they? I mean, they've lost to Ipswich and then at home, and then they've gone to Man City and won 4-0. It's just the season they're having. But on their day, they can be a really, really great team, as good as anyone in the league. So I'm not particularly confident about Saturday, particularly knowing that Anderson could be out. So that makes me a bit concerned. I think I'm hopeful about Brighton, because actually our record against Brighton is really good, home and away.
Thursday night as well.
It is, yeah. It really frustrates the Brighton fans. It's brilliant, but I think that's one that I'm eyeing as one we need to turn up in, because the other games, following that, we then have Arsenal at home, which I know we got points off them last year, but you just can't rely on that game to be the game that kind of gets any points towards our total. So. And then Liverpool away is one of like Man City. It's a bit of a write-off game, and if you get something from it, massive bonus. So yeah, look, I'm just hoping over the next few games we manage to find some points somewhere and keep the gap between the bottom going. I'm not so much looking up at the moment, but after that, we've got some more winnable games, and then I'll start looking up again like you, Jack.
Oh, we've got to keep it positive after yesterday. Come on.
Yeah, look, we're going to take it one game at a time, and yeah.
It's a season, isn't it? It's a long season.
Yeah.
Long way to go. Got to play.
Yeah,
Everyone's got to play everyone.
How
So
it goes.
yeah. Guys, look. Any final sort of wrap up thoughts on the game and how we're sort of feeling? It was a rough one off the back of an international break. Couple of injuries now. Mary, your sort of thoughts looking forward to the next game and to Spurs?
I think we've got to obviously make some changes, like we've all said. I think we've got to look at this set piece stat. Like, why are we not scoring any corners or set pieces? I think, did we have 7 corners maybe yesterday? And it's like we've got to take those opportunities. So I do think that's something longer term we need to be looking at. We've got to make the most of them. And we just got to go again. I think we can't be too negative on it. It wasn't a great day in the office, but it's a long season, isn't it? And we can go again at Spurs. I'd like to see some changes, and I'd like to see Traore on. Yeah. I agree. Smith Rowe didn't have his best game yesterday. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how he sets up on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I'd noticed earlier on the Discord group, Mary, that Claire Green had said it's now 110 corners this season without a goal. You know, that just seems nuts.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I hate that. I hate that statistic. That's ridiculous, Dave.
Are we the only team in the Prem that haven't scored a corner, probably?
Correct,
I think that's
from
right.
any set piece, in fact.
Yeah.
And the weird
thing seem to be getting worse as well, don't they? They seem to be getting worse.
Is the commentators mentioned that Fulham were the 3rd highest scorers from corners last season in the Premier League, and all of a sudden we've just dropped to the absolute other end of the table, which is baffling. It doesn't make any sense because we were obviously doing it right last year. We have lost some height. I know we've lost Polina, lost Tosin, but it's not like we haven't brought in Berger and Anderson, who are both tall blokes as well and good in the air and, you know, have a record of scoring goals too. It doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I mean, the creativity issues, like the corners have been getting worse, I think, and the set pieces into the box have been getting worse. But I also think earlier in the season, we have also missed a lot of really good chances to score. I mean, we mentioned earlier about Raul in the Villa game missing a header from about 3 yards out. You know, there's been a few occasions where we should have scored and we haven't. So look, it's looking back at this game, I think it's one of those games where a lot of things went wrong for us, a bit like Aston Villa. The Premier League is so bizarre this year. There's, you know, you're getting results like this. I mean, look at yesterday, Spurs winning away at Man City 4-0. So it's been a bit crazy, the league this year. There's been, you know, there's been kind of strange results, and I put down as one of those. But I think I'm moving forward next week. We've got an opportunity to, you know, refresh the side, and he's got to make some changes to refresh the side and give some players a go. And we've all said Traore's nailed on to start. He has to be, and that's going to give us an outlet. And you know, Spurs, they're so inconsistent. So, you know, there's possible, if we can take our chances, as always, we always say this, but if we can take our chances, there's an opportunity to get a goal or two over there. So, but it's not the best platform to go into that game after losing 4-1 at home, and that's why we're all going to be feeling a little bit negative. But you never know. The Premier League's a funny old league this year, and it only takes, you know, taking our chances when we get them next week, and we might all be having a great afternoon.
Hopefully.
I mean, you look at Spurs. Fulham have actually lost less games than Spurs this year. Fulham have lost 4, Spurs have lost 5, but they've also won 6. So there's some inconsistency there with Spurs, and you just never know which team's going to rock up on the day. But I also think sometimes you never know what Fulham team's going to rock up on the day. So it's going to be one of those where we just have to sort of cross our fingers going into the game. It's a Sunday afternoon game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 2:00.
Sammy, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, you actually mentioned something in our executive chat, which I actually thought was quite a good, poignant question. So because I know for a fact it definitely, because Dad always complains about it, but it literally ruins the rest of his week. So my question to the group is, how do we recover after such a thrilling day? Like, what do you guys use to detox? What's your poor performance rehab regiment? I would love to hear.
I think that was Skibby actually who raised that one.
I'm just going to throw it down. I mean, we've mentioned Skibby, we've mentioned Dad now, so everybody's getting a look in, like, yeah.
Go on, Mary.
What's after as a fan?
As a fan, wait, you can actually talk. Sorry,
I think you've got to chat about it. Like, it's not. No one enjoys games like yesterday, but you've just got to have a bit of a debrief about it, have a moan at what you want to have a moan about, and then move forwards, I suppose. But yeah, as a player, it's really tough when you lose a game or you don't have a good performance or it's not the result you want. We try and give ourselves a day or two where we're allowed to be irritated about stuff, annoyed about it, however else you would want to describe it. But then you've got to move on. But I think we're allowed that window of having a moan about it, aren't we?
Yeah, of course.
This session is the best for that. We can have a good old debrief and then we can move on with our lives. I tend to do the opposite, Sam. I just, when Fulham win a game, I watch the highlights 10 times. I watch Match of the Day. I listen to all the podcasts. I want to know everything, everyone's opinion. When we lose, shut down. Like Match of the Day is, I'm watching a film. It's not. Football doesn't exist at 5 o'clock after Fulham have lost the game, at least for 24 hours. So
that's funny.
That's my grief. That's how I manage my grief.
Whereas after the Brentford game, we're all up till stupid o'clock, still watching the clips.
Exactly right. Actually, Skibby, who put that on Blue Sky, got a great answer from Grant, which we'll retweet from our account as well. It said, "It sounds cheesy, but I hug my daughter. Don't want her to see me ranting and raving at a loss, so we have a hug and I ask her what she thinks, what went wrong. She's only 10, but he said it makes him feel better," which is just such a nice.
That's a bit wholesome, isn't it?
Wholesome way to end a horrible podcast. No, look, it's one of those things. I guess you just have to try and work your way through it. And like you said, Mary, it's just great to sit down and have a chat. And I think that's the joy of doing this podcast, especially for us, is we get to actually have that cathartic experience where we can get it all out and talk about how crap it was, but then move on and start thinking about the next game, which is the only way you can do it, because it's a long season. Like we said, there's still 26 games left in this season. It's early doors, really. We're only a third of the way through, so long way to go.
Lots to play for, isn't there?
Put this one in the past, chuck it in the bin, forget about it. And when people say, "How do we go against Wolves last season?" Go, I can't remember.
And then bring up the Brentford game again.
Yeah, exactly.
I
do remember that game. That was a good one.
The David Crave solution.
Exactly right. Guys, I think we can wrap it up there. Mary, a huge thank you for joining the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Been trying to tee it up for a very long time. It's been really good to finally get you on, and hopefully we get you on again in the future sometime soon.
Yeah, happy to be on board. Hopefully next time we've got a bit more positivity to talk about.
Yeah, let's try and put it before a Brentford game or a Southampton or an Ipswich game or something like that, and we can try and lock in a win. Yeah. Dave, thanks again for joining us today, mate.
No, thanks for having me. I do feel better. I feel a little bit better. So yeah, I'll go away now and I'll start looking forward to next week, and I'll be a bit more optimistic. You've inspired me, Jack. So fingers crossed for some changes. Fingers crossed for a result. Would be nothing better than to win over there. As you know, my in-laws are all Spurs fans. So and we don't win very often against Spurs. So it's nice to get a few wins in the bank,
especially against the in-laws. Yep. Sammy, thanks for joining tonight.
Thanks for having me. Next time you'll see me, I'll have a much better mic and probably better lighting. But genuinely, I know we've already covered it, but I just want to say how much I've really honestly enjoyed having Mary on the show, because she's given insights that we haven't had before. I feel like we actually have a professional here, because I'm definitely not one. So it's great to have that beautiful contrast with, Mary, you've been an absolute delight. Genuinely appreciate
Oh yeah, well, I'd
it.
love to come back on. It was good fun, actually.
All right, next week. What time are we on? What time are we on? Lock that in. That's live. That's documented. Signed, sealed, delivered. She's ours. Done.
As long as we get a win.
Yeah, definitely. You'll be flicking us messages straight after a win, going, right, I'm free this weekend. Let's do it.
Yeah.
No, really appreciate it again, Mary. Thank you to everyone who's joined in on the live stream. Thank you to everyone who continues to like and subscribe the podcast. Please do share it around. And as always, come on, you Whites.
You Whites.